Morning, everyone. We're pretty excited here to have another interesting session around community. This is focused on kind of updating everybody here on what are some of the new integrations that are happening from a partner space, and also cover some of the state of the communities for Atlas and Ranger. So we wanted to just give a brief update on the community, and Ali, my co-presenter here, who is from Partner Engineering, will also cover the certification process that we have for some of the partners. And then we have extremely happy to have three partners up here, DataGuys, ThinkSort, and Cinerscope, and they will run through some of the more recent integrations they've done with Atlas and Ranger, just to kind of show the footprint of how the ecosystem is expanding and some value-added capabilities that are coming in on top of the Apache projects. So we'll very quickly start with an update of where the community is. And then we'll hand it off to the partners to provide the updates on what their integration points are and what some of the cool stuff that they're doing with Atlas and Ranger. So first to start with, Ranger, as most of you know, came from our XA Secure acquisition back in 2014. We steadily marched along with adding capabilities in different fronts around all kinds of data security, key management services, auditing, et cetera. And the most recent version that comes with HTTP 264, which is in the community, Ranger 0.71, introduced some very interesting and neat capabilities around classification-based masking, multi-nested LDAP sinks, et cetera. So lots of very cool features that have been added. Some of these things will also show in how the partners are consuming those. We reached a big milestone back in 2017. We graduated to a top-level project, and then our committer count is growing, and the variety of organizations that have committers and contributors to Ranger is also expanding quite a bit. There is also a lot of movement around integrations with other systems and partner certifications that have happened over the past year or so. So this is a rough picture of our current state. So on the left here, you see all of the authorizations that Ranger provides today out of the box. And then on the top right there that you see the extensions to sort of non-native big data systems where Ranger has been applied. And then there's a bunch of partner integration that you see here. There's several more that you will see in action here today as we go through this. So the big picture here being Ranger is being now extended into Hadoop and big data ecosystem products, such as the Microsoft WASP layer, EMC Isilon, and Pivotal Hawk, to name a couple. These are extensions which are not looking only at a big data footprint, but also looking at some other file systems and maybe even some other object storage in the cloud, et cetera, for which we can now have Ranger authorizations. In fact, in the HD Insight space, Microsoft WASB, that is the only authorizer that is there. We don't even have file system ACLs. And we're working closely with Microsoft on enhancing this for ADLS. There will also be other things on the IBM front that will come over the next year around lots of new cool integrations from Ranger. Shifting gears a little bit, Apache Atlas. So we achieved another milestone there. It was the top-level status came through last June, and then we are again marching towards a 1.0 that will come with HTTP 3 sometime in Q3 of this year. The committer count there is also expanding with a lot of input from IBM. IBM is helping us solidify and create a lot of very foundational capabilities, both natively in Atlas as also as part of the open metadata ecosystem. We have several folks in the audience here from IBM, so if you guys have questions on what we're doing with them, we'd be happy to talk offline also about some of those activities in the community that surround that. You can see all of those logos that help contribute to Atlas. We have committers from each of those logos, and also that's also growing and expanding. Ecosystem here, so we added, since we gave the update last time in the San Jose Summit, we added NiFi, which is a very key piece that was introduced in HDF 3.1. And then we have all the other connectors. We have several more coming in the upcoming Atlas 1.0 around HBase, Spark, et cetera. All of those are in the works and making their way through the community. On the partner certification front, we have certified several new partners here. So Since we did this last year, we've added SyncSort and Attunity to the mix here. They have also been certified on Atlas, and you will hear from SyncSort today. And we also have several in the works on the right-hand side that are marked as pending, which are in various stages of integration. IBM has called out specifically outside simply because we view them as pretty much part of our product. They are co-developing Atlas essentially with us, so that's why we call them out separately out there on this slide. So that's pretty much what we had from a partner and community update perspective, so I'll hand it off to Ramesh from DataGuys, who will talk about DataGuys integrations. Thank you.
We can use this, right? Hi, everybody. Thanks, Sri and Ali, for the introduction. So, DataGuys, in case you haven't heard, is a Silicon Valley company. We are 10 years old. We have been focused right from the beginning on sensitive data, personal data. The name DataGuys came because we started with data masking in databases. Of course, we've expanded our footprint significantly since that time. We were the first to introduce data-centric security in Hadoop. First deployed customer, very large credit card processor, 2012. And we've been focusing on cloud technologies over the last 3-4 years. We have DG Secure, which is our main product, and then we also have it as a service on demand, which we announced recently. We have a large number of customers, as you can see here, over the years. So we have learned a lot about finding sensitive data in extremely large repositories and protecting the sensitive data in a variety of ways. So where does DataGuys run? So it works on-prem and in the cloud. We do detection, masking, encryption, access control integration. I've highlighted that because that's kind of the focus of today's talk. For the GDPR special requirements, we support the right of access, right of erasure, right to restrict processing. We have a monitoring subsystem which does breach detection. And overall, we report everything in a dashboard, which covers entire on-prem as well as cloud properties. Our distribution support is pretty wide, as you can see here, for Hortonworks, HT Insight, all the Hadoop flavors. We support a wide range of databases, cloud stores, as well as Windows flat files, Linux, and SAS, etc. So overall, we are a very wide, I would say, in terms of GDPR backend requirements, finding the personal data, pseudonymizing the personal data, breach detection, right of access, right to be forgotten, and right to restrict processing. We have, I would say, the widest coverage among current vendors because we've been at it for a long time. And again, it's not fully automatable, as everyone knows. There's a lot of integration involved with GDPR solutions. But our aim is to automate whatever can be reasonably automated. Okay. With respect to Hortonworks itself, we support detection of personal data in all the distros. We have masking, wide range of options there, and encryption in Hortonworks. We do the same level of support both for Hive and HDFS. So we do detect unstructured as well as structured data. And we do a deep inspection. We can do 100% of all your files or whatever set percentage that you prefer. We also support all the execution engines and integrated standard security protocols, which Hortonworks support. Again, monitoring, as well as, of course, the last topic here being Atlas and Ranger integration, which we'll go into a bit more detail. So going into the access control integration, we do discovery on a continuous basis. The discovery results are piped to Atlas in terms of tags, and these tags can be used in protecting access at the level of sensitive data rather than, say, columns or tables of Hive. So overall, if you look at the round trip here, the level of abstraction at which the end user deals with is at the level of sensitive or personal data. Okay. So this will be the flow. DG Secure detection populates Atlas with the tags. Range of policies can be set up, and the access control based on the personal tags. Okay, I'll go to the demo. Just a second here. So this is DG Secure. Typically in DG Secure, one starts with a policy, and we have predefined policies for GDPR, PII, variety of things. You can also create your own policies. You can also create sensitive types. Again, we come out with a large number of sensitive types predefined out here, which cover all the personal data fields, most of them which GDPR defines, but you can also have your own sensitive types defined. We have very powerful means of defining your sensitive types, which include not just regular expression. You can have actions defined to identify it. You can have context also defined here when you define the sensitive types. Once you define your policy, typically the way you do is you execute tasks. You set up tasks on a regular basis to execute. For example, here we have Hive tasks, and the results of the Hive tasks here, we ran it on the Hotonio Bank version of that. And you can see the detailed results here, how many records were found, the hit count, hit ratio, null count, etc. And the way we do the discovery here is, as I said, you can set the level of how much you want to search from. It can be 1% or it can be 100% of your data. And we also have in a lot of heuristics going behind. For example, we found only 160 credit cards, and out of the 16, 17 records here, and a lot of them didn't pass the Lund's check or other heuristics which we have in the back end. So in terms of finding the sensitive data, we also have additional context taken into account. For certain complex items, like, for example, the European addresses, we have machine learning where we train the models to understand the different formats and different variations, and those are in place behind the scenes. Okay, so once this, and I'll just quickly go through how Hadoop results look. This is at the HDFS level. We also have a monitoring subsystem which can raise alerts based on access to the sensitive data. We have a flow here which includes GDPR, right of access and right of erasure requests coming in, and this can be used by DPO to approve the various requests. And then we have an overall dashboard which talks about what's sensitive across all your platforms, cloud as well as on-prem. Now coming to the Atlas integration, once the discovery is done, tags are populated. The DG underscore tags are the ones populated by DataGuys. For example, here, this is a medical record number tag. And if you go into the details of this tag, this column has been tagged with this particular medical record number, and you can see which table it's in. So once you have this information, it can be used in almost pretty much all the Atlas applications can use these tags for their own analysis. And then the same tags are available here in Ranger in terms of setting up policies. As you can see here, the policy for medical record number here is set so that the admin group can use it. And depending on, of course, access here, if the admin user comes in, and since the policy is enabled, the user can do a select through the Hive interface or any other interface, really, because Ranger kicks in at any time of access here. Okay, I think you get the picture. Basically, if the policy is enabled, the query will execute. If not, it will fail. And I have some shots as to how it looks. So this is a successful execution of the policy. Whereas if the policy is disabled, you will get the standard range error. So I guess that's any other questions or any, yeah.
We'll take the questions at the end, actually.
Okay, yeah, I know.
There were a couple of products to go. If we don't get time, we'll happily take your questions outside and stay as long as you need. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I used that one which was already in. That's 3. 3 should be. Just put that in. Yeah, let's take that one. That's going to work. Oh, wait. I think it's doing something. Unfortunately, we had to switch computers. There we go. What do you mean? No, I do everything here. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Marco Kopp from SyncSort, and I would like to show you, well, basically going into the same direction, showing you the integration with our tool called DMX-h and how it integrates with Atlas. So the high-level overview or the high-level steps are pretty straightforward because when you build a workflow within our tool, it get executed. We are providing basically then all the data required for the data lineage, and we'll then send that stuff to Apache Atlas by using the supported or the REST API that's being basically available to tag the information. So that's really pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So whatever you're basically seeing then on DMX-h, you also see then later on within the data lineage of Atlas. So we'll show you later on in the demo. Here's the first a screenshot already. So on the top right side, you will see that's basically the workflow, how it looks like. A very simple workflow in this case, how it looks like when you develop it and design it within our tool, within our GUI. And then on the other side, you see it how the lineage looks like within Atlas with the tags. And it could be either such tags, and of course could be other ones as well. So what is DMX-h in general basically doing? So we are a tool with basically a small footprint, which means you need to install it, obviously. But then you can move your data or access your data and copy it or move it and do changes on the fly while putting it from basically any kind of sources into your Hadoop cluster. So we are basically, as I said, moving the data, and this also includes mainframe data, because we know that a lot of information that is necessary for GDPR is still existing in mainframe area, so especially whatever banks, insurances, but even if you booking a flight, I know a lot of stuff is still on the mainframe, and getting access to that basically old iron thing is difficult. So we are supporting that as well, and of course everything is then being integrated or fully integrated with Ambari and Atlas and also Ranger. So this includes then also the whole security around, so like LDAP security, Kerberos security. So all of that is available, and we then also, as a demo is here, supporting the Atlas integration as well as whatever metadata management for H catalog. Then we just got, as far as I know, recently certified to the latest Hortonworks version. So HTTP, so we are part of the whole partner alliance basically, and just got certified with our DMX tool to be integrated. So the picture itself, going a little bit more into the details, is you get in basically at the end an end-to-end view from your data sources to your target and what happens in between. So of course what we are first doing is we're picking up basically any kind of sources. It could be either already in the data lake, it could be outside of the data lake, it could be basically anywhere as long as we have access to it. We can basically grab it. So we take the data, modify it on the fly, merge the data, or move it, or even just stream the data. And oops, the other way around. And then, of course, if it's whatever task like joining, merging, enhancement, data quality, or whatever is necessary to make changes to the data, this will be then done and executed on the cluster itself. And this also includes then the tagging and the data integration with Apache Atlas. So at the end, you get on one side the final data, however you defined it, how it should look like. And on the other side, of course, you get then the chances within Atlas to review it or use any other whatever tools to get access to this kind of information. So the overall architecture is basically here a little bit more in detail on the left-hand side. So the benefits is basically that we are really available and the tool to move your data basically very fast from one system to the other one, putting it into a new modern data architecture for analytics stuff, visualization, or of course also for the whole GDPR topic. As we said, we are supporting basically any kind of sources. Another speciality within our ETL process, within the development phase, you just develop it once, and it doesn't matter where you would like to execute it. So if you I can run it on my system, then right away switch to a Windows box to say execute the process there. I can switch to a Linux system, execute it over there, or I can switch to the Hadoop cluster, say, well, my software is installed here. That's my sync sort server in the cluster. Execute it there. And you don't need to change any code or scripting or do anything like that. Everything is done behind the scenes, and you can even switch if you would like to run the stuff in MapReduce or in Spark, which also includes Spark 2.0. So you don't need to do any changes. You just develop it, execute it, and everything is done behind the scenes without any modification. So which is great. So you don't need to have basically deep Hadoop knowledge in whatever writing queries or something like that. Everything is done automatically. And we're also picking up whatever is available on the cluster itself. So if you have whatever 10 nodes, we're picking up those 10 nodes. If you have decided that you need more nodes, whatever, increasing it to 20, 30, 100 nodes, whatever, we're using what is there and what is basically needed. So to summarize basically what we have is, as I said, we are basically the tool to really making the data accessible in the cluster. And then, as I covered already, it doesn't matter how we execute. We're basically supporting them basically everything like MapReduce or Spark. It could be also just in a stream, so we could also put the stuff in a Kafka or put it to Splunk. So whatever is basically available and around at the beginning or at the end, we are there to support it. So having that said, let's go briefly into a demo, which is in my case quite short because it's pretty straightforward. As we said, we're designing here the workflow. It's really in this case a very simple one, which is taking a mainframe data in EPSIDIC and converts it on the fly into ASCII. because usually EBCDIC is difficult to read for other tools, so therefore we're converting it to ASCII in this case. So that's pretty straightforward. The tool or the job, and within Atlas, once we are logged in, then of course we can then either search for the text or start searching here. So I'm putting in dataset, DMX-h, click on search. Then of course we get all the informations, and to pick the right one, which shows you basically in here. So and then you get the information within Atlas, showing now in this case the same information. You get what we already saw before, the same details, the same information. So if you scroll down, you get whatever details information, what happened when, what changed, etc. So that's of course all can be found here. And the more functionality will be put into Apache Atlas, the more of course we are also being then supporting and making available. That's pretty straightforward. Let me go back once to show you. It could be either, as I said, just a simple one, or of course it could be a little bit more complex workflow where you can then see more stuff is happening in between. The workflow within DMX-h would look like the same. Here just represented in Atlas, and then of course can be picked up from other sources as well, and from other tools. I think that's it from my side. So I hand it over to the next guys. And as we said before, if there are questions, either I think after the show outside or downstairs at our booth. Thank you.
Phone working? Now it's working? Yep.
Starting at the end, let's not do that.
So good morning. That one isn't. Hello? Good morning, everyone. Great turnout. I always like to start with a question. How many from you are from Europe? How many outside of Europe? Okay. Presumably you also are dealing with clients that might have European sort of origins. So happy to the club that is going to be subject to GDPR in a month's time, in a good month's time. How many of you have actually feel that you're prepared on the technical side? Okay, work to do. The first work, of course, is you have to know your data, and you have to be transparent. And I think the first question that we all will have to answer is if someone comes and says, if I come to your bank, to your company, and I ask you, what do you know about me? In your current system, how many people think that they can answer that question in under 30 minutes of work? How many think they need more than like 2 hours to actually get me that answer? So somewhere between that half hour and 2 hours per request. Well, there is a few citizens out there. We have heard that many companies are still thinking that the request number will be very low. We all know what we're setting ourselves up for if the request number is a little bit higher. So GDPR, we think you should be transparent with PII data. And I just want to give a message to all of you to go home with, which is, if you become transparent with PII data, if you manage it technically, why don't you give the keys to the actual customer? Why don't you show him all his data and you ask him to verify if the data is correct? Now, that requires a little system, and that's what we're going to talk about. So my name is Jan Kees. I founded the company a few years ago, and Thomas will do the demo. So next slide. So we think it all starts almost like 6 things. Know your data, know the entirety of the data infrastructure. So where does data go? And that's what we've built systems for on top of Hadoop. know the flow patterns between the applications. So the data coming in, where is it feeding, which ones are pulling data out of where. Also knowing that exactly who's behind that. Establish and execute your remediation processes, which means that you need to set and execute your policies based on granular knowledge about the content. And that's probably where we are different from most people. We actually start with parsing every cell in the data lake. Not just metadata, not just sampling. We hit every cell and we tell you exactly what is in every cell because we believe that is the only basis going forward of doing this coherently and consistently. Then apply your governance, and we saw a few other things and a few other, so I'm not going to go into that, Thomas. So what are we about? Is including that 80% of the data that you actually have great difficulty in managing anyway. We started this to actually bring it to use for analytics, and then of course the whole GDPR development came, and we can do the same thing for GDPR because it starts with discovery. You have to be able to search for it across your data lake. We love matching data at the content level because that helps you putting files correctly together. You need to know your data content, your quality, the use patterns. And very important, we recently worked in a fiduciary care problem in the insurance industry. And we got some kudos from a Big Four because they were able, on the basis of the transparency of our system, to certify that all the processes were done right. Highly personal data. And that made us think this transparency and this auditability is something that is going to be very important because companies are going to be asked to sort of put certified reports out there. And the authorities like to go to the auditors because the auditors are personally liable if they stamp something that is not correct afterwards. Yep, we'll skip this slide because everyone is getting sort of like low down. So this is roughly how it works. Once all the data is in Hadoop, XCWA, our product, starts launching jobs in Yarn, which actually then go to Spark. So we do that full content scanning. That's why we can do it on an entire data lake. The tags get posted in MongoDB. And then also XCWA pushes everything automatically, because we were asked by one of the Hortonworks people, can you show us a push button? And we said a push button. This is all automatically. We want everything that happens on the data lake to be logged. It's not an activity, it's something that happens in the background. Everything gets logged, fully transparent. The processes, who touches the data, there is no pushing or thinking. And then obviously we also integrate that with Ranger for access control, content-driven access control. We think that is part of the whole equation. So with that, I think it's best if we just show the product.
Let's do it. I'll take this one, yeah. So you're looking at Cinescope XCWA, and each one of these little squares, so for example, this one is an individual data set, right? And the larger blocks could be source systems within your organization. Could be a relational database you have running somewhere, existing Hive tables, or simply something like a file on your desktop. But they all end up in this visual overview. And right now it's colored by size, so the more intense the color red is, the bigger the data set is. It's simple as that. But I can also turn this around and change this to color by data sensitivity. Right, so now for my entire data lake, I get an overview where was personally identifiable information detected. Of course, red means that there's personally identifiable information in there, and green means it's good to go. So immediately you have an overview of how many data sets in your organization are actually containing that information. Right, so this is done upon ingest. So we connect to the source system. The data is profiled. I can show you an example of that. So each data set, for example, this data set about emails, you can see some details like how many rows there are in, how many columns it has. I can get a preview of the data, a few sample rows. I can see the details for each columns, so like statistical overviews, the most number, the values most used, where there are missing values in the data, and things like email addresses, credit cards, etc. They get detected and tagged resulting in the overview you see on the left. Combine that with related data objects. So for example, if I select this data set here, it's telling me that I can link this data set to 3 other data sets in the data lake. Right? So suppose I have a customer that appears in one data set. You can immediately follow those relations across the data lake because it knows which ones are connected on the customer level or on the row level. And it's not based coincidentally because they both have a field called customer ID or something like that. No, it's looking at the actual data and matching those based on that. Combine that with a very powerful search functionality. So for example, if I search, I'm going to search for the license plate of my car, for example. And it's searching through the entire data lake at this speed. So it's not a pre-cached thing or anything. It's showing me where my car, my license plate appears in this data lake. So it's appearing in those 3 data sets. So this functionality, combined with the scanning for GDPR upon ingest, gives you a really powerful tool, not only to get an overview, where should I focus on for regulations, but also if customers come with questions like, what do you know about me? Right? You can immediately give them an answer. And as Jan Kees said before, why not have them check it themselves and verify the content that you're actually able to find within your organization. Just want to show one final thing. So suppose I take one random data set, for example this one here. I go to the column details, and then suppose I specify, and remember this is now green, right? There's no PII in there, but just to show you what happens upon ingest. So if I now say this column is actually a credit card number, just by adding that tag. Just what normally would happen automatically, but just for the sake of the demo, I can add a credit card there or any other type of personally identifiable information, and it turns red immediately. Again, as Jan Kees said, this is pushed then to Ranger and Atlas for access control. So the tags are stored in Atlas as well, immediately push to Ranger for permissions. So suppose I don't want to give the entire organization access to datasets with credit cards, I can manage the permissions based on those same types of tags. That's it as far as the live demo is concerned. So I hand the mic back to you, I guess, now.
Maybe you want to take a question?
So I'm told I can take 1 or 2 questions while we're switching over. So if there's anyone...
Very simple question. Before you switched it, that had name in it, but it wasn't showing a sensitive. Do you not consider name to be sensitive?
Right, so the question is, before I turned it into credit card, the field was saying name, right? And name you might also consider to be PII. So the way I've set it up now for this purpose of this demo, the user or the owner of the system can configure what they consider to be PII, and they can assign a score to that, right? So name could be considered PII, and you can assign a certain threshold before it turns red. And in this case, name had a weight of 10 to it, and credit card 100, right? So this is why it's not showing up in that case, yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. Interesting you're using the term PII. The GDPR term is personal data. PII is just a subset of personal data. Do you also have categories of personal data, like contacts, health, financial, or is it just one big list of types?
So as I guess this also, the answer to the previous question applies to this as well. So it's up to the user. So we can supply you with a default set of rules and regulations, but we're happy to work with you to define your own definition or adapt it to the definition as you find it appropriate from the regulation, right? So it's flexible in that regard. It's not set in stone.
Folks, we have some more content to finish up here, so maybe we can.
So hey guys, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for staying till the end. So I don't need to advertise about the partner certification program. These guys did an excellent job advertising for us. So if you're an ISV who's interested in the security and governance domain, please come talk to us and get certified. Hopefully we'll get you guys also a chance to come up on stage and talk about your solution. If you're not, and if you're working with an ISV who you think should be integrated deeper with the Hadoop ecosystem, please push on them to come to us as well. So we have a number of different certifications that we have. The ones that you saw today were around the security ready and governance ready. So please learn more. There's a URL down there. So so with that, I'll just I'll just end it over here. Thank you so much for coming. We'll be outside for questions. I think we're gonna get kicked out in a second.